everyone please stand. Georgetown City Council meeting is now called to order. If we would stand and have a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, we ask Councilman Hampton to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, we have to have roll call.
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mrs. Wilkins-Brent?
Here.
Mrs. Butcher-Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Hambrick? Present. Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Showalter? Here. Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mrs. Tuck?
Thank you. At this time, we're going to motion to approve the minutes.
Motion, Mayor.
Second.
Motion is made, properly second. Are there further questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. You should have received the check registered. If you have received them, please raise your hand. All have received. Thank you. Public comments at this time. Just to remind you, on public comments, you have 4 minutes. Please be cognizant and please be respectful of your time. And this is not a question and answer, and we will just let you state your business before the council. At this time, we call Mr. Stephen Price to come up.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins, Council, for allowing me to address you, and the audience for being here, showing an interest in the local government, which you should have an interest in the local government because it's failing to do its job. The Georgetown Police Department is supposed to enforce the laws of Kentucky as well as, at least, you tell me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong, Chief?
Mr. Price,
Am I wrong?
Mr. Price, we remind you again, this is not question and answer.
Okay,
You have
all
4
right.
minutes.
Let me
Okay.
assume, I know that the laws of Kentucky have been, I've witnessed the laws of Kentucky being enforced by the Georgetown Police Department. And I reported a motor traffic violation some weeks ago at the storage unit that I rent. A motorist rode in across the driveway from me, got out and went into his storage unit and left the engine running. And I walked over and said, buddy, would you like some tomato plants? I've got raising a garden back here behind this storage unit. They're letting me do that. Would you like some tomato plants? He said, no, I don't need them. I got all I need. I said, well, if you need any kind of garden plants, I always usually have a lot of them. Trying to be a good neighbor. I said, buddy, I hate to tell you, but you're leaving your vehicle running. That's a violation of KRS 189.430, item 3. It says when a motorist gets out of the state of Kentucky, he's supposed to shut off the engine, not leave the motor vehicle running, standing unattended with the engine running. And he smarted up and said they got real loud and called his wife, and the two of them got out of the car and went on to unload the car and wouldn't shut it off. Wasn't anything I could do about it. I told them what the law says. It says you're supposed to shut that engine off. They ignored me. And on the following, the following Thursday, the landlord comes to me and tells me that I've got to vacate the premises. And he didn't tell me why, but since then I've talked to one of the other landlords, and he told me that the code enforcement office received a complaint or gave him the code enforcement. He said Devin Golden, as far as I know, he said Devin Golden told him that I have to vacate the premises within 14 days because I asked these people to comply with the law. Again, KRS 189.430 says you're supposed to shut off your motor vehicle when you get out of it. These storage units are in a narrow drive space, and the concrete walls of the buildings create a canyon. the fumes and the noise from the motor vehicle were making my visit to my storage unit very unpleasant and very unhealthy. And I had an under KRS 503, which is this chapter of the penal code on offers justification. I was justified to cite the law in my defense. And the chapter on justification further cites a public duty to speak up for the law. And that's all I did. I asked the man, please shut off your engine. Now, the last time I did that, so now I'm ordered by these code enforcement people, apparently, Devin Golden, to the landlord, that I'm supposed to vacate the premises within 14 days because I cited the law. And I don't like citing the law. I don't like being a bad neighbor. I like being a good neighbor. But in this case, I defended myself using the law as my tool. Is that my time up?
You have a few more. You need to be finishing up. Just
Okay.
finish up your statement.
So let me tell you, the last time I reported the similar motor traffic violation on Rucker Avenue in spring of 2022, I believe it was. And the next thing I knew, here came, I told you at your office, Mayor, here came Policeman Muravchik. Get your stuff and get out of here by 5 o'clock, 11 o'clock on a Friday morning. Get your stuff and be out of here by 5 o'clock. Because I reported the same motor traffic violation, KRS 189.430. I'm being victimized by lawless motorists, and I have the right to invoke the law. And your personnel are retaliating against me for invoking the law by causing they caused my landlady on Rucker Avenue to evict me, and now they're trying to get my current landlord to evict me because I stood up for the law.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any others that get a chance to come to council? Any other public comments?
I had 2 events and neither one of them showed up, so. they're
Okay.
all in your packet.
Okay. Just was informed that there are 2 events, but they're not here, but the information is in your packet about the 2 events. All right. Next on the agenda is comments from the mayor. I want to let you know that the construction on City Hall should be starting sometime this week. We are going to kind of keep you abreast of all the going-ons with that, and also parking. We know that sometimes parking is an issue, and we're going to keep you updated because there are going to be some parking changes because of the construction, but we will make sure that we're going to let you know what we're going to do. We're also in the plan of actually, because of those constructions, that we're going to, along with the traffic committee and also with Public Works, we're going to come up with some type of change to where we're going to, what we lose, we're going to be able to get in another spot. So we don't have a problem with the parking. So we'll keep you abreast on that. We'll put it on the webpage and anything else you need to know about that. Also, on August the 12th is Georgetown College Moving In Day for freshmen. There are a couple of street closures that they're going to have, and we're going to make sure that we get that out so that you will know what streets are involved. I think Jackson and College are probably 2 of the main ones, but we'll keep you abreast of that. Okay, next we have the proclamation in memory of Clarence Norman Lytle, and its proclamation reads as follows. Proclamation in memory of Clarence Norm Lytle. Whereas Clarence Norman Lytle was born in Moorhead, Kentucky on February 20th, 1971, beginning a life of passionately serving his community, and whereas Norm began serving as a volunteer firefighter with Moorhead Fire Department in 1992, retired as a career firefighter for the city of Georgetown in 2019. And even in retirement, volunteered for the St. George Island, Florida Fire Department. And whereas, in word and deed, Norman embodied all the things a firefighter should be and represented in the profession with honor and integrity. And whereas, in addition to his dedicated life within the fire service, Norm fully immersed himself in every community where he lived and worked, serving as a city councilman in Moorhead, Kentucky, owning and operating small business in multiple cities, maintaining membership as a Freemason and Shriner, and generally exhibiting a willingness to help anyone in need. And whereas described by those who knew him best as selflessness and humble, Norm had a heart of gold, an infectious personality, and a knack for bringing out the best qualities in others. And whereas Norm passed away peacefully at his home on Monday, June 26, 2023, with his wife by his side after battling pancreatic cancer. And whereas the city of Georgetown, the Georgetown Fire Department, are grateful for Norm's time in service to our community and extend our condolences to his family and friends as they mourn his loss. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Bernie Jenkins, on behalf of the city of Georgetown and its citizens, do hereby honor the memory of Clarence Norm Lido for his dedication to the city of Georgetown over the course of his 20 years of service to our community. Date this 24th day of July, 2023, City of Georgetown, Kentucky, Mayor Bernie Jenkins.
Mayor, somebody that served with Norm, he was a great guy, and I would be more than happy to make a motion to accept that.
Motion is made. It's second. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we have Georgetown Police Department promotion pending of Lieutenant Louis Crump.
Mayor and council, since January, I've had the opportunity to be here several times to do this. It's always exciting. I can tell you, worked with Lieutenant Crump since he was hired. Worked with him the most when he was a detective. I was his sergeant and lieutenant, and I can tell you his work ethic is pretty much above anybody's, I would believe. He's a very strong detective, worked a lot of hours, worked very well on a lot of drug arrests. I know that was his passion. Did a really good job. He's always asking how to better himself. He wanted to promote up. So I'm glad to see this. I'm excited to see what he'll do for us. I know our command staff is strong, but I know adding Lieutenant Crump's going to make us even stronger. He has a lot of great ideas and a lot of drive, so I'm excited for him. So Lieutenant Crump, come on up. His wife Shelby's going to pin him, and his two little boys will be here to help her out.
I don't want to mess the shot.
All right.
Who's that bald guy in the back?
Congratulations to Lieutenant Crump.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, next, we have the council committee reports, and we have Public Works.
Okay.
As a follow-up to what you said, Mayor, about the meeting, we talked about there being 30 to 40 parking spaces blocked off behind City Hall during the remodel. There will be a chain link fence put up next week. It will be put on Facebook and the city website to let citizens and people know about the parking situation. We also discussed putting gravel down at the old center of town property for additional parking. Eddie Hightower is getting a price on the gravel. Robert said that the brush issue is getting out of hand again. Some contractors are leaving tree debris when they clean it up for people and not removing it. Devin and Robert are going to work on a stringent policy. We also discussed the corner of Wendy's Public Works removal of the hedges that say Georgetown and put in new landscaping. The old hedges could not be pruned anymore. They were out of control. And that's what we discussed at our meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Traffic Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. It was a lengthy meeting, but I'm going to kind of highlight some things here. We had Ashton Grove came to the Traffic Committee with a petition with 102 signatures for a sign to be placed. Stop sign instead of the yield sign. We did advise them it was on private property, so they would have to contact the property owner to change that. One other thing that they did request was for the state to look at potentially a light or some traffic control for those coming out of Ashton Grove and Bevins Lane onto the bypass. They did have an elderly gentleman that was at the meeting that had hit when the driver was going approximately 75 miles an hour. John Steinmetz with Banks Engineering, newly hired for the city, looking at areas for traffic surveys. So that will be addressed, and if there's any others, then we can have those brought in and taken care of. Jane and Chris Cutter were there. They discussed about several issues out on the east end of town, Walmart, Wendy's, all along Cherry Blossom, and on Icabana Path. Miss Elmira Wilkins addressed speeding issues on North Court Street, how some people are using North Court to avoid traffic lights. There's no sidewalks or any place for those that are walking to get off the road if need to. So, Brandsetter Carroll was there and discussed the modifications to the parking lot out onto Broadway for the new pavilion in downtown, and they're going to come back with some new designs. Jason Gray of Woodland Avenue, issues with cars parking on the side of the road where it was difficult for them to come out. Eddie Hightower will be looking at that. Speeding on not only West Showalter, but other issues that we're going to be looking at with the traffic. A few streets that wanted to have parking switched on one side or the other, but they cannot due to the fire hydrants and for emergency vehicles. Norfolk Southern is going to be looking at the grade crossing at East Main Extended, Bridge Street. The Bridge Street project, they're looking at wanting to take, the Norfolk Southern wants to take out the bridge, and we said that we would support both projects, widening of East Main Street, extended crossing. Also, there is the bridge on Clayton Avenue over the railroad tracks that is slated to be redone so that double stack railroad cars can come through there. Street lights On state roads, 2 of the 32 have been installed. And that's the highlights.
Thank you. Finance?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. We met on July 17th. Among the topics discussed, City Hall tax credits. The application that was filed was for $12.3 million. And Stacy, if I missed something, please correct me. Of which we will be eligible for 78%, or 78%, and 20% of that would roughly be around 1.7 million. Is that correct, Stacy? That's what.
Devin and I ended up looking at that application again.
Yeah.
It was about 1.8 million
Okay.
maximum credits that we're eligible
Okay.
for, after we discussed it with a couple of financial institutions.
So we're looking at, investing those and I guess we have a couple options to look at as far as, taking the money up front, or we can invest that and have more money to pay down on the project itself. Stacy's going to solicit some more quotes on that. We already have one, 88 cents on the dollar. And we'll let everybody know about that. The cooperative purchasing decision, currently the county uses that, and we're looking at going to that for purchasing of items. Right now, I guess it's a sole source or state contract, and the school districts use it as well as the fiscal court. It's through NASPO and Sourcewell. Is that correct, Stacy?
Yes.
Okay. So it'll give us greater purchasing power, so we'll take a look at that, and we'll keep the council informed of that. The third item was tower space lease. Right now, we have radio towers that we are currently leasing to different mobile companies, and we have additional space on those. We have currently 6 towers that we're looking at, and we're going to be doing some investigation of that, and to lease out more space and generate more revenue in the future. Other discussions, we talked about Public Works and the gripper and dump truck coming up, and then I'm going to let Alonzo go into the KLC investments.
Okay, we invested about $5 million with a bank that we talked about a couple of weeks here. KLC has an income investment service, so we're asking them to come in and do a presentation to the Finance Committee so we can learn more about what they're doing, because we already partner with them, just to see if there's some additional opportunities for us. Then the other thing we talked about was grant research. There's a lot of grants out there that we feel like we're missing out on. So we had a lot of discussion around that. We do not have anybody really dedicated to grants other than each department's doing their own grants research. So we talked about, some different options and possibilities. We'll formulate some presentation to come back to council and talk through a little bit deeper about grants, how to kind of maximize those opportunities.
Anything else?
That's all. Thank you.
One other thing I failed to mention One other thing I failed to mention in the mayor's comments was that Devin and I think Eddie and Stacy and them all took part in the City Hall construction kickoff, which they got with all the different groups that's involved in this big project, and to make sure everybody's on the same page. And once we get a lot of information out from that meeting, they'll keep us attuned to what's going on, and Devin will be involved with it, one is Eddie, and also Patrick, who's our risk assessment, and he will make sure that we all are complying within the law, as well as safety precautions and everything else, and progress reports as they continue to work on this particular massive project. All right, thank you.
Mayor, did have one additional thing. Just a reminder, revenue work session, August the 9th, 4 to 6.
Yep. Okay. Next on the agenda, we executive session.
Yep.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll move that we enter executive session pursuant to KSR 61.8101C to discuss matters of proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of the city.
Second.
We have a motion made, properly second. Are there any other questions or further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. So this stands in adjournment.
Mike's on, Mike's off. Mike's on,
Yeah,
Mike's
we
off.
can't do nothing without Tracy.
She has a serious look on her.
Ready?
Yep.
I'll make the motion that we come out of executive session.
Second.
Motion is made and properly second to come out of executive session. Are there any further questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say likewise. We're now back in session. At this time, we're going to have some, let's see, GMWSS, some bills to pay, so.
Good evening. I'm Sean Darrington, presenting on behalf of GMWSS. Chase can't be here as he's having some travel delays. For your consideration tonight, we have 5 purchase orders. Xylem Water Solutions for $10,109.05 for wastewater treatment plant 2. It is to replace a backwash pump for one of the sand filters. Repairs are cost prohibitive compared to replacement. There's still 2 cloth filters and 1 sand filter in operation, but the pump has a 14-week lead time. The funds will be taken from maintenance and repairs and reimbursed by TMMK. Next, we have Esri for $11,770 for engineering. This is a budgeted expense for annual software support and online licenses for our GIS mapping software that's used in the field, as well as in our offices. Also, we have Water Solutions Unlimited for $12,375 for the water treatment plant. This is for 4,500 gallons of sodium hypochlorite, which is our primary disinfectant that is budgeted and purchased every 4 to 6 weeks. We also have Hexagon Technologies for $81,360 for wastewater treatment plant 2. This is for 6 loads of hexafloc phosphorus removal chemical. This is a chemical bid item, and approximately 4,000 gallons per month are used. It's a budgeted item, which is reimbursed by TMMK. Finally, we have Judy Construction for $413,097.36 for wastewater treatment plant 1. This is application for payment number 27 for the plant upgrade and expansion. The result is a cumulative payment of $32.78 million of the $64.78 million contract price. This represents 55.6% complete of the budget spent, of which 33.9% is work complete and 21.7% is stored material. The application for payment also represents 829 days on the job since the March 25th, 2021 start date. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I have a question. In terms of your chemicals, the sodium hypochlorite and the others that you mentioned, is that cost going up, down, staying the same? What are you seeing?
It's actually been coming down a little bit since COVID days. We do have chemical bid prices, but because those fluctuate a bit, we still contact different vendors and we get the best price at the time. So
Is it within the budget?
it is, yes.
Okay, but in terms of what you budgeted, you're seeing that cost is starting to come down now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep, it's creeping down.
Good.
It may not stay that way, but
Yeah, and you're purchasing, you said 4 months out on some of those chemicals? Enough to cover 4-month period, I thought that.
it's usually 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, 4 to
for
6.
that one.
Okay.
So we have a couple of tanks, and so, we fill them and use them.
Okay, the motion is made.
Second.
Motion made and properly second. Are there further questions or discussion? All those in favor of these motions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say likewise. All right. Next, we have go ahead.
Additionally, we're bringing you the wastewater treatment plant 1 upgrade and expansion change order number 5 time extension. Following the discovery of structural design deficiencies and subsequent redesign of 11 structures, Judy Construction incurred delays from stoppage of work and an expanded scope of work within the construction contract. Judy has submitted a revised project schedule that establishes new dates for project milestones. This proposal has been reviewed and approved by the GMWSS Board, staff, and legal counsel, as well as GRW engineers. The new dates are as follows. Beneficial use, March 31st, 2025. Substantial completion, October 1st, 2025. Final completion, December 31st, 2025. These are working project dates that have been anticipated for some time and have been provided on the application for payments for the last several months. They are now being formalized in the change order number 5. Therefore, we seek approval from the council as well for this change order.
All right, question. How is this because Chase had talked about this would be coming online approximately fourth quarter 2024 or first quarter 2025. How does that impact this timing?
That is first quarter of 2025.
So we're still on what was projected?
Yes.
I make a motion.
A motion has been made.
I'll second.
Motion is made, properly second. Are there further discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say likewise. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have with us, with Public Service, Tim Ward and Todd. And there, I think I sent them some questions, though, that maybe they'll be able to answer. And I also send the council a copy of those questions. And we're going to let them tell us about those, answer those questions.
Yep.
Okay?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, we got quite a bit that we'd like to go over
Okay.
with you guys. We got a little bit of the good and the bad, per se.
Could you state, which one's Tim Ward? I haven't met.
Tim Ward.
And what's your name?
I'm Todd Pryor,
Okay.
P-R-E-H-E-R.
Prayer.
All right. I'm the manager of municipal sales. Tim is the general manager. So lately, with the spring up of some additional issues going on, Tim played a little undercover boss, not really, but incognito, followed around all 5 drivers out here. It was deemed that one driver was in the Indian Hills area, then that part of the route was not fulfilling what we deem as a Republic way. A driver's no longer with us, as well as a supervisor who did not get on board as well. So we have made steps there on our end. We've brought in a guy who Tim knows more history on him, but Ernie was a supervisor for years with us, had to move to another location, and he is back, and he's dynamite. He really is good. We really look forward for him bringing on his ideas, but that's where we're at with the drivers. To answer Commissioner Walter's first questions, we have 5 drivers. There's 4 trash, 1 recycle. All right. The next question was about the breakdowns. When we have somebody break down, we send in other drivers. They could be within the area already. If the other drivers are not close to being completed, we'll bring in another driver from from Frankfort or even Lexington to help complete the routes. Our goal is to complete every single route every day. There are breakdowns and stuff that happen, but other than that, the goal is, depending on DOT hours, the drivers are restricted in how many hours they can drive per week, per day. So that's where we're at with the breakdowns. Also, if the truck packs out, if it's a very heavy week, that could eliminate him actually getting back. To complete that route, we send the drivers out first thing next day. They're not to complete the regular route first. They need to complete yesterday's route before they get into the regular scheduled route.
So where that can get tricky, just to give a little more kind of detail into that, right? If we have restrictions at the landfill as to how late the landfill is allowed to be open on a normal business day, right? If a driver is running late and can't dump the night before, that also causes a delay. If he doesn't dump the night before, then he's going to wait for the landfill to open the next morning where they normally start at 5, you can't get out of there until 7 or 7:30, depending on the time of year. So that getting in and starting fresh really does make a big deal.
So they do feel under pressure to stay within that time limit, which could impact the quality of the job that's happening.
It can, but honestly, there's not a need to. There is plenty of time to get things done. Where we create our own problems from time to time, quite frankly, is when we're not taking the time to take the right steps. Like, going fast doesn't actually make us faster, right? It just causes problems, because we get a call throughout the day that somebody says, hey, I think you missed me, and whether we did or whether we didn't, we're going back. And that's just gonna take them more time, right? We can cause incidents, accidents, right? When we're going behind and I'm watching a driver leave a can in the road when he just doesn't extend that arm to put it back, I'm making him stop and go back and do it, right? Because he's got to learn that that's what we expect. And so going fast honestly causes more problems. Is there pressure to get things done? Of course, right? We have a high expectation. But there's also a fine line of balancing that and safety. That makes sense, right? Every day it kind of bounces between a level of making sure we have enough services to get the day done, balanced with their hours, right? There's DOT regulations on a daily basis on how many hours of the day they can work, how many hours they have to be off work before they start the next day. Then you throw in hours of operation, both start times that the city wants us to stay within, of course, right, to respect neighborhoods' timelines, as well as getting back at the end of the day. So there's a litany of things that go in there where it's not a simple, it's done by this time, but unless a catastrophe type thing happens, weather happens, there's really not a reason for us to get complete other than we caused a failure, which is what I just refuse to accept, right? That's our job to fix that.
So another question is about is it possible for a route to be missed on a given week? It's possible for a street, you know, based on human error, but not for a whole route to be missed. It's not possible. We see the perception of that miscommunication on, especially like the recycling, on what their day really is.
Or which week.
Or which week
Yeah.
the recycling's picked up, sorry about that. But that's where somebody might perceive as you know, they didn't pick up recycling today. Do Republic drivers get paid by the hour? They do get paid by the hour. Right? They are hourly drivers. And the turnover rate for our drivers right now is 14.8%. When a new Republic driver is hired, does that driver get any training with an experienced driver on the specific routes that he or she will be covering? Or is that new driver just thrown in and he or she learns on their own? We train all of our drivers, regardless of their experience, for a minimum of 3 weeks. And they are in the truck with a behind-the-wheel instructor during that time who knows the routes in the area. So that's how they are trained. And those Republic trucks have cameras that the driver can use so that the driver can see trash either gets stuck on the roof of the truck or spills out on the road. Yeah, we have three different camera systems. We have one on the roof that shines into the hopper so he can see what kind of trash in case there's something that's contaminant. He's got that. The backup camera to help assist with the safety aspect of backing up, as well as a route camera. And that's the one that we can kind of see in front of him and see if there's any trash spilling as he's pouring, or if a container's not out. That's when he'll take a picture a lot of times to show that a container wasn't out, that he didn't actually miss it on that end.
Now, I will say a caveat to that, especially any of those front, side, or top-facing cameras, those are disabled when that truck is moving forward. Because that is a distracted driving nightmare. So on purpose, any of those do not work when you're going forward, right? But I think the more the point of that question is, what are we doing about trash that comes out of the truck, right? And should we be picking it up? Because I expect if we created it, we pick it up, period. There are absolutely instances where that hasn't been happening, and that's why we've been checking in and setting better expectations from our teams, because we shouldn't. If we're creating it, we are responsible for taking care of it, period.
And you're also saying that the drivers can see it. And so unless the truck is moving, they should be able to see if they're leaving trash that's flying around.
They absolutely shouldn't, right? Is there an instance where they just flat out didn't see it? I'm sure there is, but that's a rarity, honestly. We should be able to see it, and we should be able to take care of it. And we expect that out of ourselves, and we expect that out of our teams, right? You know, could we ask for help bagging trash? Absolutely. Is that the only solution? No, but honestly, it helps tremendously. This is something we see in communities where a lot of trash isn't bagged, but that's not the only solution, and that's not the only thing to look at to say this is the problem, right? Regardless of the problem, we have a commitment to this community that we need to hold up, right? And though we're not seeing it widespread, we see it enough that it's not acceptable. Quite frankly, seeing it once is not acceptable. So the other thing that we're working on is there's two different types of, if you're familiar with most of our trash trucks, they use what's called a carrata, where there's a big bucket in front of it, and then the can's dumped in the bucket, and that's what goes over there, right? So we tend to see trash coming out in two spots. If the trash isn't bagged, sometimes it can go out right when it's dumped, right? And then if it's loose, it can, when it's being brought up, right? Those are the two times that you kind of see it. We're working on two different types of covers for the Corrado can itself that are supposed to help with that. The problem we're having is parts of them are on back order, like half of everything in this world right now. We've received half of what's called an automated tarper system. It'll open when somebody dumps a can. As soon as that can's put back, it closes. It won't open again until it's upside down. We're waiting on half of the parts to test that out to see if it works. Where we're not 100% sure if it'll work or not is with all the bulk items we have. We don't know how it's going to happen when you hit something that sticks up. We got to figure it out, but we'll figure it out. There's for lack of a better term, a horsehair type that they're building for us to figure out if that would work as well. So we're going to try both of those and figure out what does work and add that as soon as we can. But that'd go on our trash trucks, not the recycle. We run 4 trash trucks, 1 recycle.
Any idea when you all will be able to test that?
Well, we were hoping about a month and a half ago.
That longer.
We were told the latest on the other parts that we're waiting on for that one, we were told that they hope by the end of August.
The horsehair or the cover?
That's the actual automated cover, yeah. But that also kind of ties into the next question, right? What is the expectation? If we cause it, we fix it, period, right? That's pretty plain forward and simple. How many stops per day do we average in Georgetown? We average 3,715 stops per day. It's a pretty sizable number, right? 5 total routes. So if you look at like the first 6 months of this year, that's 481,000 times that we dumped the can in the city of Georgetown.
Those cans or those addresses?
Those are cans, not addresses, to be clear, right? If somebody has 2 cans, it's counted as 2. Because that measurement is part of how we figure out how much is going into that truck, right? Every can generally weighs so much, it takes up so much space. That's how you calculate how many times you can fill it before you have to go back. What times do we clock in each day? 5 o'clock is our clock in time for our guys. End of day, it's kind of a little bit what we talked about earlier, right? It really depends on DOT regulations. So there's regulations around going over 12 hours. There's absolute regulations over 14 hours in a day. You also have to have 10 hours between your stop time and your start time the next day. You also have to have 36-hour reset in any given 7-day week. So it does depend on the day, but generally we start at 5. There's a whole clock in. We have a 5-minute meeting every single morning. They have to do a whole pre-trip inspection of the truck. It's a DOT requirement. And then they're on the road. End of day, again, just varies. What happens if a route is not complete? Is the driver held accountable, disciplined? Absolutely. There is discipline, everything from coaching all the way up to and including termination. Obviously, I wouldn't speak publicly about an individual, but absolutely. There's a full gamut of expectations that we all hold ourselves accountable. All right, do our drivers have to hit a certain amount of stops per day? If so, what is that number? I don't have them with me, but each route has a specific number each day. So like when I said we average out to 3715, right? One route is like 770 some, one route is 880. The recycle route's 540 something. If you guys want it, we can get it to you. but each day has a specifically different number. That depends on where they're at, locations, all of that. Where am I at here? Kind of answers the next question, do the drivers hit a certain amount of stops per day? If they fall below, what happens? Again, it kind of depends on what caused the fall below. You know, if we only have 2 or 4 drivers in Georgetown, can we look at additional drivers' commitments? Honestly, we already have 5. Are things that we have seen that we expect better of or not? It's not a lack of drivers. It's not, right? We've seen pockets of performance issues. We've seen pockets of miscommunication issues. You know, you're going to have a sprinkled in truck issue where, luck of the draw, every single truck has some silly problem that causes 2 hours worth of delays every single day. It's pretty rare, but that definitely happens. The other one was around, hey, getting more communication out. We actually had been working with Sarah. We have activated a dedicated line for the city of Georgetown so that we can track better data. It still goes to the exact same place. It still gets the exact same information. But one of the things it does is when it comes in on that phone number, it alerts them this is 100% Georgetown, right? They get a heads up based on the area code that things come from. When we get an address, they know what it is, but this jumps right to it, which gives the resident a better experience. As well as partnering with, we brought our corporate marketing people in to help build some communication models. So I agree with you, right? Every bit that we can do to help on the communication part of it, I think matters. To go along with that, a couple stats. We try to do 6-month reviews, and we try to do this year versus last year as a comparison. The first half of this year to the first half of last year, the models and maps are really, really muddy because started February, March last year. It's not a full 6-month comparison. In February, March, when you have that increase, and you naturally see an increase when you have bad weather events. And if you remember, we had wildly bad weather events at the beginning of this. So it's not fair to say, look, first 6 months last year, we had 17,894 calls, and this year we had 6,500. Yay us, right? That's not really a fair comparison. But if you look at just April to June, throw out February, March, which were the 2 months of the big spike last year, and compare April to June last year, April to June this year, you are talking about a 56% decrease, right? You're talking about having 5,400 calls versus 2,408 calls, okay? So we break those down, and we go down and say of the 2,408 calls, there were a total of 1,000, I'm reading that wrong, don't mind me. Reading the long line. So this year, January to June, there were a total of 1,081 calls that had some type of service-related question. They thought they were missed, they want, have a complaint, they have a concern, whatever it may be, anything that could be related to, we have a service concern, right? There were a total of 1,081 calls, right? Of those 1,081 calls, and just getting some information from the customer, 324 were escalated and logged to us as a service, what we just call a service fit, okay? So the other ones, that means when they talk to them, the majority of the calls we get are what we call worry calls, right? Somebody calls and says, hey, they haven't picked me up. We just hadn't been there yet that day. That's a huge number of calls. 324 were escalated and logged as we don't think we were serviced correctly. 153 of those were actually worry ones. We did service them that same day. They just weren't logged. So even when you look at 324 that came through, that's out of the 481,000. So on my end, is 324 acceptable? No, not one is acceptable, right? Percentage-wise, we're talking about 1/100th of 1% of services, right? So service-wise, things are actually moving in the right direction, right? We absolutely need to be better at making sure cans are put back. We're not leaving trash where it needs to go, right? We need to work on the communication part, and that'll help us on things like getting more call-ins for bulk. Bulk is one of the biggest things that affects what time we show up, right? The reality is when we have a service dialed in, we're there within a 10-minute time frame, right? When somebody has a bowl, right, on a weekly basis, they should actually call in and be planned for it. When they don't call in, we're still gonna get it, right, as long as it fits within the right time frames and everything that's supposed to happen. But if we don't know it's there, we don't plan for it, that's what packs those trucks out quicker. And we see a pretty high number of those. So those are the things that we're hoping that the communication part can work on. But it still is a matter of, quite frankly, having the right people in the right seats. And we know we didn't, and we made that change, and I expect a better period. So I think that answered those questions, but I'm sure it brought up more. So what questions can we help with from there?
Do you know how many streets or I guess courts that you have in Georgetown that you have difficulty getting down? As
I
far
don't
as
off the top of my head, but I can get that information.
I was just curious.
It's not enough that has been escalated to me.
Okay.
Usually if we have a high number, I'm directly involved in it because it's usually not a service concern, it's a safety concern, right? But I could find out for sure.
Okay, I was just curious. I mean, the complaints I've heard were where they may have gone a couple of weeks without service, and was wondering if it was just the size or the width of their street. I mean, your trucks are rather large, so.
Yeah, if there's a car parked on the street or something and inhibiting him to be able to get around that cul-de-sac, you know, that hurts a lot of the productivity and stuff. Now, he might get out one time and go around to the other 5 houses and grab them, but if that car continues to be there, you know, and we don't have a phone number to call.
What should happen if that ever happens is the driver documents it, right? Comes
He takes a
into either our
picture.
dispatcher supervisor, and we're getting a hold of customers, right?
Okay.
That can be tricky because we don't have all customer information, right, when we got our initial list. I mean, my home phone number from Champaign, Illinois 6 years ago is probably on half of my bank stuff still. I don't even have a home phone anymore, right? So sometimes we just don't have the right information to get a hold of people. But that function of the driver should be documented if something can't happen just right. And then we need to be able to reach out to the resident and say, hey, here's what's going on. Even bulk items, some of them, we can take them, but they're too big for that Corrado can, right? We call in, we schedule either somebody to come help or somebody else to come get it on, you know, a lot of times the easiest thing to do is when our cart delivery guy's out there, we have a trailer, we can get it on the trailer. It's a big couch or something like that, right? But we need to make sure that is that communication getting to the customer? Because if all the resident sees is we were there, we serviced this can, we left that, we drove off, and they just saw that on the Ring door camera and don't have any communication, not knowing that we're coming back at 3:30 to pick it up, of course I would, right? It's a matter of can we get the right information to them in the right timeline to be able to communicate what's happening, not we just drove off to that.
If you all have repeated instances, you just brought up the cul-de-sac parking issue of things that are perceived to be parking violations, I can send you, we've got kind of just a laundry list of prohibited parking situations, and if we can get some kind of communication going there, because I'm assuming there's some repeat offender streets, we can address that through Georgetown Police Department enforcement to kind of, you know, nip that in the bud, because I think that's something that we've got to partner on as well to help you all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, along the lines of communication, you know, this number 324, it's probably higher because I get dozens that probably it's a dead-end call once they call me. Even though I say you need to let Republic know, they probably don't. So we need to do a better job of telling them, look, call Republic first, then call us, because we also need to know the accuracy of numbers. So I suspect that 324, based on the calls that all of us have gotten, where people have not then called Republic, is a lot higher.
I mean, if we're not getting the information, that can be tricky, right? I would definitely encourage you to get that information to the mayor's office as well. Like, we're in pretty regular communication
Right.
on anything
need to
that's
call
perceived or
both.
not. Absolutely.
Right,
Let us know.
I,
We can take care of it.
and the process, and I'm trying to make sure everybody understands this, that, you know, the process is this. Once they have a complaint, they need to call Republic Direct. Then if they don't get anything from them, then they should be calling City Hall. they really shouldn't be calling you all. I know they do, but we have to do a better job of letting them know, hey, you all have to call them, and then that way we can track it both ways. They can track it, and then we also following up tracking. So, and I know I know we got citizens that wants to continue to do that, but it helps the process if we are able to channel it in this particular way.
We can't fix it if we don't know, right? You know.
And I don't mind being called, it's just that I want to make sure they make the follow-up call,
Right.
but I would, and I also say, and right after you hang up there, call the mayor's office.
Right.
I'm not going to wait and
Right.
have them, you know, if it doesn't get fixed, because then the mayor's office will probably never find out.
Well, I'd like to ask you something. My situation is, because they knew I was on Public Works before, on Public Works again, neighbors will contact me and say, hey, I've got this item, and what should I do? I said, well, you call Republic. You tell them, obviously it's a larger item, it's not going to fit in the can. You tell them what you've got, and you have a discussion with them. And then go according to what they say. Well, neighbor called, said, I've got this small organ that needs to be picked up, and it's pretty heavy. Guy says, about how big is it? I said, well, it's so many feet by so many feet. It isn't a huge church organ. It's a small one in the house. And they said, no problem, ma'am, we'll come and pick it up. The grabber truck the grabber part picks it up, drops it, drives off. She had to pay somebody to come and pick up her broken organ. And she told him it's heavy. And I know it's a 75-pound situation, isn't it? Anything less than that. But they implied, no problem, we'll take care of it, we'll come and get it. They lost the grip on it, it fell, broke, and they left it. So they're asking me what to do, I'm telling them to call you. And, you know, other situations from another neighbor is, and there's many, I'll only do two to you, but is I am not able to come down 4 or 5 stone steps with my garbage can to the street level. And she's one house away from Hill Street. She's on Montgomery. So could she push it to Hill Street, which is just literally the width of one house next to her, and have her garbage picked up on Hill Street? And Republic has told her repeatedly, absolutely not. It has to be picked up at your street address. And she can't get that can down 6 stone steps to the street. So, you know, I think the way it was done before when Public Works helped her, that's what they recommended, that's what she did. And she's had multiple calls to you guys. And I wish she was here. I suggested she come tonight so she could tell you a few more details on it. But we just have to, there are going to be some people, residents of Georgetown, that, you know, like she's 70-something years old. And there are going to be some people that can't manage that, but can go across with permission to her neighbor's backyard, set it on Hill Street, and have it picked up at that location. But they just, you know, my son and I went over and got some bad spoiled meat out of her garbage can and took it to our garbage can to be picked up, you know, because she was freaking out over it.
Just like we touched on, you know, other employees and stuff, you know, the Republic way isn't always the right way. Sometimes you got to think outside the box and do what's right?
Well,
and
completely agree.
And
logistically
that just makes
right,
sense. That just,
you know.
that just makes sense to me. I mean, we preach about safety being the number one concern.
It's a straight shot.
That's just safer for her to do that.
Well, she just can't do it any other way. And she said, I can't ask somebody weekly to come take care of my garbage. That's not right.
You know her address?
Yeah, I was gonna say, or.
It's on Montgomery. I'll get it for you in just a minute.
Yeah.
Please. And you know, talking about the right thing, outside of safety, the biggest push right now from our corporate is customer zeal, right? And that customer zeal is doing the right thing, making the customer feel appreciated. Not just external customers, but internal customers, you know? Our maintenance department, our drivers, you know, we are all customers of one another. And we need to know everything to be able to improve customer zeal for everybody.
Well, and I'm trying to answer questions people are asking me, and then I tell them to
The way we
contact
see
you,
it,
and then,
your citizens are customers of our drivers, right? You guys are customers of ours, and we just want that customer zeal for everybody, really.
I have a question. How do you guys measure efficiency, internal efficiency?
It's done quite a few different ways. I mean, you know, when you're talking about a residential route, you look at, the general thing you look at is how many cans per hour do you take care of, right? But you can't just have a number, right? We don't have a number for every single residential route we have in our entire business unit. Every route is different, right? A residential route inside of a municipality is very, very dense, and you can get a lot more. You can get a whole lot more in the city of Simpsonville, different from here, because even though they're both more urban areas where they're dense, right? House next to house next to house. We don't do bulk pickup the same way we do it. So we can go from one house to the next house to the next house. In Simpsonville, we do have to stop about a quarter of the time and get out and pick up a bulk item here.
So what do you track?
Literally everything. I track how many miles, hours, number of stops, how many stops they have, how many cans per stop, how many cans are dumped, how many fuel miles that we've done, how many engine hours we have, how much fuel I use per engine hour.
Is that collected at the end of the shift?
Ridiculous amounts of data.
Tons.
Is that collected at the end of the shift, that information?
It's collected all day, every day, absolutely.
So if on Monday, the driver has Route A, which should be every Monday, right? Do you know where that driver is at 2 o'clock or in the first 2 hours?
So we should if everything works. And in what that means is, what can affect that is traffic, if there's a wreck that gets us stuck, weather, things like that. In theory, he should be in the same spot every single time.
Right.
I will say in Georgetown, what has thrown that off a little bit is the bulk items, right? When we know how many bulk items we're supposed to be picking up, yeah, we have a good idea of where he's gonna be, how backed up he'll be, how ahead he'll be. When there's 3 times the amount of bulk items to pick up that we didn't know about, it just slows them down.
But do you have the internal GPS on the truck that you can see that truck? That's where I'm going.
That's separate
So-
from kind of the tracking part of it. I can see where every single one of my trucks is at any given.
So when you see that truck is behind where they should be, what do you do? What action do you take?
It depends throughout the day, right? My supervisors are checking on them to see what is causing them to do that. Are they going to be okay? There's communication almost hourly with the drivers, kind of where they're on the routes, how are they looking, where do we think we need to be? And then you try to plan out, if they're going to need help, how do we do it? How do we dispatch it? Where does it go to?
And they usually know about like 10 o'clock in the morning if they're gonna be running behind or something. Because we'll get emails, hey, just a heads up, this is where we're at with Route 315 in Georgetown. If by such 1 o'clock, we'll send so-and-so to help out.
So they email you that information? But you can see it?
Like, by the time it gets to me, there's a bit of an alarm bell going off. So I won't generally have every single 10 a.m. update of what is and isn't going, right? But if there's a risk of it, then yeah, something's coming to me.
It's more sent to the operations manager.
But yeah, so the supervisors are communicating with themselves. So our supervisors, our logistical analysts are on that. And then my operations manager is as well. If there's any kind of maintenance concern that's causing any delays, our maintenance team is on it as well. At the point that they say this could be a problem, we may have to pull lever, do these things, then I'm in the loop.
I would like to come and see your tracking data and your information.
There's a lot.
I got time, and I like data.
Okay,
So-
we can do that. Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Okay.
And there's gonna be more. We just put tablets in all of our residential trucks recently. So the next part that's coming is they're building out the turn by turn. Every single stop will be turn by turn on there. The other part of that that's gonna help automate a lot for them is, we pull up a lot, and if somebody doesn't have their can out, we document that their can's not out. We have a lot of people who will call in after the fact and say, you missed me.
There's a can on there.
Well, I was there at this time with the can out. Now, generally, we still say, hey, do me a favor, next week, have it out by this time. We'll be back there either later today or tomorrow. We'll take care of you, but do me a favor and put it out earlier. But that's gonna be an automated system, and customers can get notified, like, hey, my truck is X number of stops away from me, and you're up next. And they can get a text if they want that says your can was serviced, right, which is pretty slick. We're making sure it works flawlessly when you have the sheer number of residential customers we have nationwide. That's not easy to do. It works in our industrial trucks, it works in our commercial trucks. They're working on the process for our residential customers. But again, it's just gonna be another communication part that will just help with the whole system.
You can actually get on the app and see, almost like pizza delivery or Uber driver, where it's at.
Is this while you're tracking, you were talking about earlier, the tracking it, I can get on the app and actually track the truck
Right.
where they
So,
are
yeah,
at.
it works for all of our commercial, the front load ones, and it works for all of our industrial ones. They haven't activated it yet with the residential ones, right? Because we've kind of committed to, if it's not working perfectly, we're not going to roll it out, because we don't want to roll it out and it's not working correctly. It's a system, like our system that we use for all of this data analytics, we built ourselves as a company. So it's all internal, which has been fantastic, because when we say, hey, this would work better, they go work through it and change it. We're not stuck to a third party. But be glad to show you.
So the 5 drivers that are in Georgetown each day, is it the same 5 drivers each and every day, Monday through Friday?
Usually, right? What can throw that off? Like, guys are assigned to routes, so yes. Guy could have a vacation, could be sick, right? We have had instances where guys have taken promotions, moved, things like that. Obviously, recently, we parted ways with somebody, so that changes who it is. But then we put our veteran, what are called swing drivers in there, guys that are trained to run all routes. They're paid to know all of them, right? But in general, yes, the same people should be running the same routes, which is why when we start digging in and we say, aha, I'm seeing problems on this route, we know how to identify it a little bit better because we can identify it with the person.
And when you talk about the 14.8% turnover of the 5 drivers that are covering Georgetown, are all, have they changed recently?
Well, one has, and that permanent role hasn't been filled yet, but yes, absolutely. One other one did because we promoted somebody. They wanted to go into a trainer swing driver role. So we have 2 newer to the route roles, but not new to what they're doing roles. So 2 of those have changed recently.
Not new to expectations.
Probably a better way to put it.
I'm going to kind of jump around because I know I think other people might have questions. When the driver starts at 5 a.m., if his or her truck is full, what landfill do you go to dump the truck before you start the route?
Benson Valley Landfill. We staged all of our trucks at Benson Valley Landfill.
Okay.
So that's where they're parked at night.
And each of those trucks is dumping at least once a day?
At least twice a day.
Twice a day?
Sometimes 3.
Okay. And again, I'm jumping around. You stated it earlier, but I just want to ask again. When a driver picks up a can, empties that can and drops the can, if that can falls over and the driver sees it, is the driver supposed to pick the can up like it was standing when he picked it up to empty it?
100% yes.
Okay.
100%.
That's the expectation.
Where it was at.
Well, I don't always say exactly where it's at, because sometimes it's in a bad spot, but it should go back where it should be, right?
Okay.
Like sometimes somebody puts it like on the bumper of their car. We're gonna move it away from the car so we don't damage the car, then we're gonna service it. We're not gonna put it back against the bumper of the car. Like, those are the types of instances I mean. But to your point, 100%, we should not leave a can knocked over, period.
So that's not acceptable
No, 0.
under any circumstance?
No,
You said you should not leave it uncovered?
knocked over.
Knocked over.
Really, we want the lid closed too, right, to keep the water out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, right? And if you're operating that claw correctly, that takes care of itself, right? But we expect our guys to do that. And
Wind is about the only thing that could alter that plan, right?
I had a lady recently who will remain anonymous, said that she personally saw a driver empty a can and some of the contents in the can fell out on the street. So she followed the driver to the very next house and asked, told the driver what happened and asked the driver to go back and pick it up, and the driver refused to do that. So what's the expectation in that type scenario?
the expectation is the driver goes back and picks it up.
The driver
right?
goes back and picks it
And
up.
I'll tell you, I watched that myself and set that expectation pretty clearly, which is also why I'm hiring a new driver.
Okay.
But 100%, if we caused it, we should do it, right? I will say they should be polite. They should be wary of people approaching them, right? Because sometimes people run up on our trucks and that can be very dangerous. So definitely, if somebody sees it, they're okay to get our attention, but please do it from a safe distance. So we definitely get people sneaking up on the side of us, and that is wildly dangerous. So I would ask, always, if somebody does bring that up, please tell them, please do it from a safe distance, but 100%, they shouldn't have to worry about that, it should happen. 100% aware it's not happening the way it should be, and that's what I'm addressing. I'm not gonna hide that it's not. I'm gonna stand up here and tell you we're not being perfect right now, and I don't accept that. If one can is not put back, I don't accept it, right? Doesn't matter, it's one out of however many thousand, right? That's a great percentage. I won't accept it until it's perfect. Is that fair? I don't know, but that's the only expectation I will accept.
I've got one follow-up, one last question, then I'm up and, sorry. Going back to the stops per day, each driver has a certain number of stops on their route that they have to make.
Yeah.
Assuming that the truck doesn't get full, assuming that the truck doesn't break down, what happens if that driver doesn't make all of his or her stops?
Well, one, we got to cover the stops first, right? And
Okay.
then we have to go back with the driver and figure out why, what caused it, right? It could be a training thing. It could be the routing is off thing, the way we think, right? He's not being efficient. There could be a multitude of reasons to say why. Couldn't tell you, but we would go back and find out why, right?
And again, with the GPS, we can track him by time, where he was at. So if he's, by chance, maybe like the last driver that we had to get rid of, was sneaking over here and taking himself a little nappy poo or something for a little bit. You know, that we can track his movements. And we can try to, that will help us determine what's going on.
What exactly happens depends, but do we review it and figure out why? 100%.
Okay, so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. One, if a route is not completed today, let's just use today, Monday, as an example, that route will be covered tomorrow at the very latest. It's not gonna wait until Monday of next week.
Tomorrow, very first. Like the way
It's
it
not-
works, if something's not done today, I expect that to be done before they start tomorrow's route.
All right.
100%.
If I can, I've had several calls on cans being damaged when they're set down there. And I've seen it comes down with some force at times, and I understand it, but, I did talk to the driver that is at my house, and sometimes the smaller cans that we had don't exactly fit, but, when the can is damaged, is the driver supposed to immediately report that?
Yes.
Or,
Driver's supposed to notify us so we can get it on a schedule to figure out, is it, did a wheel pop off and the wheel needs to be replaced? Do we just need to replace the can?
okay,
Yes, absolutely.
okay,
I know that happens. I don't know that I could tell you how frequently it
Okay.
happens for sure.
yeah. And then the Georgetown line, do you have that number by chance?
I'll find it.
We have it in emails.
Tim, I don't know if we have more questions, but one thing I would ask you to do, if you would, all the answers that you have in your conversation here, if you would send me a follow-up email like we always do,
Yep.
as to what was discussed, what was your response to that, and what I would do is I would make sure that all council members gets this, so you all can have it for your records. And once again, I want to remind you, I know this is tough to do, but remind these citizens that the process, what they need to do. And, call them and then follow up with a call right behind that to us. So we'll have it and we can track it, they can track it, and then, because even when some have done that with me, I've contacted Todd and it's been taken care of. So I would email him, say, Todd, this is what happened, or if you all send me an email and stuff, I immediately send to them, and they usually pretty much on top of that. So that's the type of communication that we need, and citizens need to know that we're going to work as diligently as we can to ensure that service is provided in a professional way.
Phone number,
Okay,
502-209-3800, 3800.
And I want to thank you all for your time coming up here and answering all these questions and.
Guys, that's what we're
building
here.
this.
We're going to
pleasure.
be transparent. We're not going to sit up here and say we're perfect, right?
Not gonna hide.
I think there's a lot of things going right, but there's also things that we need to get fixed, and we're committed to doing it.
It's 107 Montgomery.
Thank you.
107 Montgomery.
And I want to
that-
thank you.
And you wanna put it
That
on,
needs
I'm
to go
sorry.
to Hill Street.
Bill, that's what I was gonna confirm.
Okay,
I
thank
want to
you.
thank you for coming as well. These are hard questions and it takes a long time and it may seem like these are picky. But
Not at all.
when a can gets put in the middle of somebody's driveway and they have to get out of their car in the rain to move it so they can get down their driveway, a lot of these things.
And what if it's on one of the
Frustrating.
busier streets? I mean, we preach about safety. We don't want you getting out of the car to move your garbage can.
Yeah, and
100%.
I want to thank Mark for coming up with these detailed questions, because without them, it's difficult to have a discussion in an organized way that gets good answers, and I appreciate that. I appreciate all of us being able to think about those questions ahead of time, and I'm hopeful that things will get better.
They have, and I think they'll continue.
Yeah.
Commissioner Allen, we'll follow up with you on a good day and time.
One last question. Going back to the educational piece, because of the fact that we continue to have so many new people moving in on a regular basis, plus the fact that I think there are people out there that never saw the first piece that went out. There are some out there. I think we got to do that.
So
Whether
we were
it's-
already working with Sarah to put all of that together. I'm in 100% agreement with you, right? And it's got to be something that's constant, partly because, I'm an old advertising guy from college, right? It used to be you see a message 15 times before you get it to click. Now it's like 300 because you see so many things, right? The more places that people can see it, the better off we are. 100% agree with you. You can't post it once and it'll work. You have to constantly do it. We have to get it with people for new residents, for moving, for most people, you want to put your can out and not think about it ever again, right? And the reality is there's one day, 2 years from now that somebody's going to have to think about it and go, oh.
And for digital
What was I
purposes,
supposed to do?
Sarah and I worked on, with our corporate team out in Phoenix, a background basically, to where every time a resident sees that background on Facebook or on the city website, that's Republic. What's that saying? Right? So.
I know back in early 2022, there was even a piece that was placed on the garbage can.
Yeah.
And I think that would be beneficial again I know that's time consuming,
Remind people.
but just, again, it was in early 2022 when we first started.
Maybe with the Georgetown.
I remember seeing it. And I
The
thought
delivery
piece.
team
It was a good educational
put those
piece
out
for
there.
people to.
I only
see.
remember because I remember there was a problem with the printer and I drove to Illinois in a snowstorm to make sure we had those in time. So I specifically remember this.
I mean, I think that's something that needs to be looked at as well. And I know that's a time-consuming process, but I think it's a process that I think is very beneficial.
Yeah, there's lots of things. And I think the reality is not one thing works. You have to do multiple items. So looking at those, looking at email blasts, making sure we have phone numbers, making sure we do it on social media, right? Everywhere that your residents get information is very important.
And I would just ask if you can keep the mayor advised on the educational piece.
Of course.
Hopefully that will remain a priority.
Yeah, no, his office actually has been very, very engaging in one.
And something else in closing is that, and emailing with Todd here, we're looking at, and we're going to let the council know once we get this finalized, that Todd is going to come to City Hall. We're going to give him a certain amount of time, maybe from 3 to 6, he will be at City Hall. If you have questions, the citizen actually come and ask him exactly.
I'll probably spend all day, Mayor.
Yeah.
I'll probably come out about 10 o'clock and just spend.
That would be great. And
I might have to, you might have to go give me lunch, but I'll stay all day.
I'll give you a bologna sandwich and we'll be all right. But yes,
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I think that's very much needed.
so he and I have been talking about that, and I think we're gonna set the date to do that, and he can come that day, and we'll put it out there so the citizens know what day we're doing that, and they can come, and we might try to do it a couple times a year. Maybe they can actually have a question and answer with Republic, and then they can find out for themselves hey, this is what you gotta do, okay?
And I ask council really, we ask all the time, people, please push the app for people that like electronics, right? That like technology. It's really a great tool for communications. That's when we send out, just a reminder it's a holiday, just a reminder it's not a holiday for us, stuff like that. That will knock out some of our phone calls on the perceived misses, the worry calls, right? So the app is an awesome tool, really is. You can do everything but schedule a bulk. So container's broken or you need an extra container, whatever it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next on the item, we got the city attorney, and we're gonna talk about the resolution approving amendment Toyota incentive agreement.
Yeah, thanks to Kim for joining for the rest of the meeting. I know that the council is very aware of this project, and I know there was a big announcement today on other news there at Toyota, so big Toyota Day. But this is an amendment to the Toyota incentive agreement. We also included in your packet the schedule of payments over the course of the incentives. As you know, as we amend the agreement, that 10-year period just starts over and the schedule of payments is revised. So if you have any questions about how the payments operate, I think I'll defer to Stacy on that. But like I said, I know the council has been adequately communicated with Kim and the Toyota team. But any questions anybody has, I know he's glad to answer them.
Need a motion?
Yes.
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made for the resolution, and we have properly second. Are there further questions or discussion? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say likewise. Perfect. Next, we have the first reading of the ordinance updating the cemetery fee schedule. Sponsors Alonzo Allen and Greg Hampton.
An ordinance to establish a revised fee schedule for Georgetown cemetery lots, interment services, and other services. Summary: 1, establishes a revised cemetery fee schedule and provides for automatic 3% increases on a biennial basis. 2, provides for repeal of inconsistent municipal orders, executive orders, or policies, or parts thereof, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication according to law. Full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 629 North Broadway, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read the first time, July 24th, 2023.
Thanks, Tracy. I want to make a couple comments on that one, Mayor, so the council has context. So you'll recall that not too long ago, we revised the building inspection fee schedule, and this is just another measure that we've been on notice. I think Gene, the sexton over at the cemetery, put us on notice right before COVID lockdown. So bless his heart, he's been very patient, but he kind of pulled together some numbers from neighboring cemeteries and let us know this is a department that, like others, the fees could help provide the service, but the city and county jointly fund Georgetown Cemetery, and we most certainly are not covering the cost through the fees. So I think the last time fees were established was like 2004. So this was definitely due for an update. We took his proposed numbers, went back and forth a little bit, talking about needs, and just like the building inspection fee schedule, we're going to keep tabs on this and see how the revenues operate in terms of the budget. But this new fee schedule it comes as his recommendation. You'll notice there are increases if the parties are not in the gate by a certain time. Interestingly enough, Gene noted that he was running into situations where services were going way too late and he was paying overtime. So that fee, people are certainly welcome to still do that, but there's going to be that fee associated with those overtime hours. So if y'all have questions or want additional information, I do have our existing fee schedule, and I can pass that out to the council right now so you know where the numbers were as established in 2004 and where they are now. And again, we'll keep tabs on what those revenues look like over the next 12 months.
So Devin, based on last year's activity, looking at this new fee structure, what would be that revenue increase? Have you looked at that?
We can get that. Yeah.
I do know we went ahead and planned for this revenue increase in the budget. I know that was part of our budget increase. I feel like we really did that, like a 20-25% increase.
I think it was closer to
But it
25.
still won't cover full expenses, but it will help offset the cost and due to the length of time, what comparable municipal cemeteries are charging. And then, as he mentioned, the overtime work for people arriving late. Those expenses you obviously can discuss. I did budget for that.
We can get the number on, in terms of how much the department is being subsidized. I mean, it's not apples to apples in how building inspection operates, but the goal should be to not overly subsidize the cemetery. And obviously there are different factors there. We do indigent burials and other things. But Gene does a really good job of, he doesn't skimp on the aesthetics of the cemetery. He does a great job. He takes a lot of pride. And I'm hoping these fees help him continue to do that. We probably could have increased them more, but that's what happens when you don't increase fees for 19, 20 years. You don't want to shock people. But we will, that's part of our efficiencies operation right now, is better tracking those revenues and expenses and keeping fees in line with the market.
All right. Okay, welcome. All right, next we have the city engineer resolution authorizing the rerouting / realignment of Cooper Alley.
So Eddie is on vacation, so I'll speak a little bit to this one, and I know Todd, as a member of the traffic committee, can speak to it again. This came up, it's been months ago at the council this came up, and it was a little bit murky on whether the council, really all that's happening is we're authorizing the county to reroute it as part of their project. There's no expense to the city. As part of their negotiations in their condemnation proceedings for the property there for the Justice Building, one property owner was hoping to gain some parking spots, and the rerouting of the alley would not only kind of free up some of that parking, but also, I think, improve the flow there. The other conversation was making it one-way. There's no recommendation tonight to make it one-way. My understanding is that that is going to be the recommendation of traffic committee, to make it one-way off of Broadway, right? Not out onto Broadway.
Right.
Off Broadway.
One-way in.
Turning
Right turn only.
Turning right onto Cooper there. So that will likely be coming to the council. I think that either has to take the form of an ordinance or municipal order, but this resolution would just say, county, so long as you're coordinating with our city engineer and communicating with the city about means and methods, you're free to reroute this road as part of your project.
Will that be one way all the way to Water Street or just?
Just to the end of the old Logan Hagen Cooper building.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that, I guess, essentially half of it, yeah.
Okay.
But that will come back probably next meeting, my understanding is.
Okay.
You need a motion?
Yes, I do.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
A motion is made and properly second. Are there further discussion and/or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say likewise. Next, the police on the municipal order approving surplus items.
I think these are just a couple of trailers. Stacy, you might be able to speak to it. You coordinated a little bit, but these are just 2 trailers that are no longer in use that we just need the council to authorize being sold via auction.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion is made.
Second.
Motion is made, properly second. Are there further discussion and/or questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say likewise. At this time, we have council comments. So we're going to start here with Mr. Stone. We're going to let you start it off this time.
Thank you, sir. I just got 2 things. One, he was here tonight and didn't get a lot of recognition, but Lieutenant Kevin Wallace is retiring July 31st after a long and very great career. So I want to mention that to him. I'm honored to work with him. He's a great guy, and the police department will miss his leadership. The second thing, and I just happened to catch it at the dentist office today, Georgetown Police Department has a news story on Spectrum News 1
I saw that as well.
all over state of Kentucky. So very well done piece. So Congratulations. I know Chief was in Florida when he found out about it, and he said, good job. So, just want to let everybody know that. That's all I got.
All right. Ms. Brent?
I do not have anything.
Okay. Ms. Conway?
I don't have anything either at this time.
All right. Mr. Showalter?
We had several individuals that were here at our last council meeting that were asking about the signage at the cemetery on North Hamilton Street. Are there any new updates?
Yes, I am going to have a meeting with the individual that I think that needs to have an individual with me. And I've got that going to be set up, and he and I hopefully will come to a resolution of what we need to do about that. And then once we get this nailed out, I will let council know exactly what we plan to do from there. All right, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, I was at Toyota today, and they made an announcement. I'm going to read some notes just from that. The Toyota USA Foundation has established $5.7 million in grants to provide opportunities and pathways for high-growth STEM-related careers in science, technology, education, and mathematics. This initiative will focus on pre-K through 12 education in select schools, Scott County, Fayette schools, and the Ignited Institute in Northern Kentucky. There's growing workforce shortages, and I got an email from Kim Sweezy. He said over the next 10 years, nearly 3.5 million manufacturing and STEM-related jobs will be available. 2 million are expected to go unfilled due to STEM skilled gaps. So this driving possibilities was going to focus on 3 areas. 1 is expand literacy and language resources. 2 is build education and industry partnerships. And then the 3rd is address transportation barriers. It's a good example of a company looking down the road and saying, I see this gap and I'm going to take some initiative to fill it. It's a very similar activity Toyota did with BCTC, partnered with BCTC to start the Advanced Manufacturing Technician Program, which is started here in Kentucky and now is a national program. And I have no doubts that this new program, the driving possibility, will be also a national program. So it's good for Scott County, good for Fayette County, and the Northern Kentucky area in terms of just developing that pathway. And I'm probably sure Toyota will expand this to other companies and let them join in as well.
And there are actually 4 schools that are actually taking part in this. And I believe it's Georgetown Middle, Southern, Lemons Mill, and Great Cross.
Right.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Hampton.
Mayor, I'm good tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Hambrick.
Yeah, that was an exciting meeting with Toyota, and there were lots of people from the state, and the mayor was there, and Ms. Brent, and Alonzo, and myself, and a lot of teachers, a lot of superintendents. It was a fantastic initiative. I mean, $5.7 million is a lot of money for an educational initiative, and it's going to help our young workforce stay right here at home if they want to. I still don't want to give up on the idea of having some kind of an ordinance going forward, or at least looking towards an ordinance for fireworks. I want to keep that on the docket at some point. I know we've got our work session for revenue coming up, but the next big time we're going to have boomers is January 1st, so we have time, but I don't want us to forget about it. It's a problem. It's destroying property at this point. Cardinal Drive, is it going to be ready by school opening?
It's still on path, and we can show next meeting. They planned it in phases so that the most critical phases for
Buses.
School traffic would be completed in time, but I'll get an update, but my understanding is it's still on schedule.
Okay, fantastic. A different cemetery issue. It happens to be a friend of mine. Her tombstone was knocked over and her ashes went to the wind. And people are getting into the cemetery after dark and doing what people do after dark in cemeteries, and they don't exactly know what happened, but they feel like the car went out of control and knocked over, and the ashes went everywhere. And I'm just wondering are the gates closed at dark? Can we close both gates? I know
Talk
the
about our
Hamels-
cemetery?
Yeah. The cemetery that's on US 25, it was Debbie Tudor's.
Talk about Georgetown Cemetery.
Yes, Georgetown
Okay.
Cemetery. And it was totally knocked over and brutalized. If we could lock the gates, it would at least keep cars out of there. Kids can obviously hop over and do what they do in the cemetery, but it would keep that kind of destruction out. And is there a possibility of cameras?
Be a whole lot of cameras.
Do they already have cameras?
No.
I mean, but at least at the entrances.
Yeah, that's, but you've got,
And maybe at the back of the house that's there, which would give some visualization as well.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there already were cameras at the house, but I will ask about
Just some suggestions,
policies on.
because it's been a devastating thing, and I'm sure it's not the first, nor will it be the last.
vandalism has gone on for years in the cemetery, so.
I know there's cameras at the office, and the garage.
Willow, at one point, they took several cast iron planters that were worth $1,000 apiece. It's been several years ago. A truck came in and just loaded up and drove off.
Yeah, I do think that shutting the gates at dark would help.
I think they did that
Simple
for a
things,
while.
yeah. We have another Recovery Ready community meeting to try to get our drug situation, and Corey Council, is that his name? Yeah, Corey Council's doing a great job with Karen Butcher, but we've got another meeting coming up, and that's moving along. Thank you, Mayor. Is it the 27th? Yeah.
2 o'clock.
Yeah, at the Health Department.
All right. Anybody? Is that everybody? Good. All right. If no other further business, this meeting is adjourned. Not too bad.
Go get wet.